That's the resort area where you go, where the beaches are really nice. The turnout of people is very diminished from what it used to be. Tourists aren't going there like they used to. There's a lot of power outage. There's not enough gas. There's not enough gas to fill up the garbage trucks. So they can't even pick up the garbage. It's really bad, right? But some of the people are resilient, those that stay. There's an incredible migration going out to Spain, the US, Canada, and it's a little hard to see that. You know? There's a little less pollution because there's fewer people driving. So we spent 2 days in Varadero, which is the resort, the first day and the last day. And then Matanzas, that's a place, Matanzas refers to the killing fields. That's where all the indigenous people were killed. Well, different places, but that was a major area where they had settled. So anybody who was a native was pretty much vanquished. Every last native was destroyed. That's not a nice part of the history. And but the bulk of the days I spent with devotees there in Havana, and that's the main city there. And we did have a chance, great opportunity to go to a lot of the yoga studios. There's a lot of yoga going on there, and even if everyone leaves that country and there's only yogis, it wouldn't be so bad actually. They're really nice folks, very mature, together. They really appreciate what we were able to give them, which is some lessons from the Bhagavad Gita, also dancing and kirtan. We brought that to the table. They were really pleased about that. It's not something that happens at every yoga session. One of the topics that they asked us to give was, what is the difference between Brahman and Parabrahman? So Brahman, as you know, we're talking about the energy that's coming from Krishna. The energy versus the energetic. When we say energetic, we're talking about the source of the energy. That is Krishna. And there's a lot of verses in the Bhagavad Gita that support that idea, that everything that is matter, everything that is spirit emanates from Krishna. So anybody who appreciates that aspect of Krishna, they will worship him. They will adore him. Because everybody loves energy, isn't it? Like food is energy. Your gas to put in the car to come here is energy. Sleep is energy, or it gives energy. And so we rarely look at what's the source of the energy, and that's the energetic. So we're talking about Brahman, which is spiritual energy. The Bhagavad Gita makes it very clear, like through Krishna's divine words, that it's coming from somewhere, this energy. And so in speaking to these yogis, we help them to appreciate there's Brahman and there's Parabrahman. And so we started off with some of the basic foundational principles of our philosophy. Aham Brahmasmi, I'm spirit. Aham, I am spirit. And then Brahmasmi means spirit. Then to take it a step further, Krishna devotes a whole chapter in the Bhagavad Gita to the Parabrahman, namely the super soul in the heart of all. And that was kind of an eye-opener for some of these students. In fact, one of the women took a whole batch of a whole set of books in Spanish, the whole set of Bhagavatams in Spanish language. She asked a question at the end, thank you so much, she said. And, in Western philosophy, we always hear that God is outside. But what you're saying, based on the Vedas, God is inside. So as chapter 13 helps us to understand, there are two entities, knowers of the field. The field is this body, and there's a lot of things going on in each of our bodies. Such like, for instance, if you're a little hungry, there's a vacuum there. It's like an empty field. And when there is some food in there, it's like all the soccer players are in the field, right? And even after you've had something to eat, there's always some kind of reaction. Something causes a burp. Something might even cause an indigestion, isn't it? And for every intake, there's going to be some stuff going on, right? When we look at, and the Sanskrit term for that is kshetra. Kshetra means field of activities. And when you open up the Bhagavad Gita, perhaps for the first time, the word appears there right in the beginning. What's happening? The blind king says to Sanjay, his secretary, what's happening at Kurukshetra? What's happening at that field of the Kurus, of our family? And by the way, that field is north of Delhi, it's south of the Himalayas, it's where the Gita was spoken. The land is relatively flat. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to have a battle there. If it's rocky and interrupted with all kinds of creeks and valleys and lakes, it wouldn't be very easy to have a battle there. But so, as we know, Kurukshetra, the war Kurukshetra, was very active and it filled up the space real fast. So, for us, those of us who are students of Bhagavad Gita, we always appreciate that, it is Arjuna, who we totally identify with, the person who's dealing with challenges, tests like nowhere ever before. And so Arjuna is like us. We can just somehow or other understand his, he had a breakdown. He had a nervous breakdown. He was depressed. And I don't know if anybody here's had a nervous breakdown, but sometimes a near nervous breakdown, maybe. We get depressed, so the pressure is on, the load is high. And what's nice about this chapter from the Gita is that we learn that there is two knowers of the field. So Arjuna understands the dynamics very well. And the Krishna also understands. So Kshetragya means Gya comes from Jnanam, knower of the field of activities, like your body, and there's nobody else can know it in the same way. But Krishna will know it. And how did Krishna get there? Well, he's there. He's just automatically there. He's all pervasive. Just like when the sun comes out, it casts its rays everywhere. It hits every point, except for where there's a shadow. But because the sun moves, it'll get behind there and it'll dissipate the shadow. How many of you walked on the street at night and you have the municipal lights and you're going and suddenly you feel, someone's behind me. Have you ever had that feeling? It's a shadow, but it's your shadow. And as you step away from the one lamp and you enter the other one, then there you can see your shadow. It's like that. So Krishna is there in the heart of all living entities. What was very interesting for this one yoga student in Cuba, in Havana, she just thought it was just a whole new idea for her. And it was so reassuring for her to know that God is there. Now, a lot of yoga audiences don't want you to talk about God. You have to be really careful. Didn't we discuss that many times? Use the divine or use the supreme or something like that. My experience of walking across the United States, when you're on the east or west coast, you can say the divine. But when you're in the Midwest, where people are a little more Christian and a little more down home, where they do eat a few more steaks. But I mean, you could say God. God resonates with them. It's not a problem for them. But really, we're addressing the same thing. A powerhouse, so something that's bigger than us. The time when the pandemic was coming to a close, there was this one gentleman, he wanted to talk to me. So I said, okay, let's talk. And we set up a time, like 1 or 2 days later, and we met in the park, Ramsden Park, across the street from the temple. And he made it clear to him, first of all, he told me his profession, his name, his profession, I'm a lawyer. And he also said, I'm also an atheist. He says, well, I won't hold that against you. I'm not going to be judgmental here. But I just wanted to give you some food for thought. I was wondering if you consider this. There's you, you're important, and then there's everything else. Now, that everything else is much bigger than you. That everything else has so much power behind it, so much resilience. And when you compare yourself to everything outside of you, that some people call God. So I was just, somehow or other, it was penetrating. It was helpful for him, you know. And I was proud because lawyers are hard to deal with. They know everything, right? There's many jokes made about lawyers, you know. Like, you probably heard them before, you know. How do you know when a lawyer is lying? When he opens his mouth. Right? How do you know, what do you call it when 5,000 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? And the answer is, it's a good start. So, anyways, he was a lawyer, and I was glad that we were able to open our minds a little bit more, look at the bigger picture of everything. And, you know, so in my conversation with this lawyer friend, I said, that does something to you, you know, when you realize something's bigger and greater and more expansive than yourself. It could invoke a kind of respect, R-E-S-P-C-T, one of my favorite songs from the pop culture. Okay. Aretha Franklin, R-E-S-P-C-T, check it out if you don't know it. And a kind of reverence, you know, like awe and reverence. This is awesome, you know, that there's something bigger than me, you know. It invokes a kind of humility, which is where real life should start from. It should start from that point. And I remember I went to an interfaith session in Winnipeg some years ago. They usually have them in the wintertime. And everyone had a chance to speak a little something. I was the guest of honor, I think, that time, just because I was a visitor. And there's this very nice lady. She's Trinidadian, and she's a Christian, but she loves Krishna. In fact, she named her first son Krishna. Right? Yeah, so she invited me. And the local priest, he had a chance to speak. And he said, he was using the word, playing on the word, understand. Understand. So he kind of gave it, he took his hand, he went under like a little table like this. When you go under something, you stand under something, then you look at everything looks so big, you know, and it evokes that kind of feeling of humility, of smallness. I'm tiny. In fact, the Vedas say that we are 1/10,000th the size of the tip of a hair. You know, it gives us an idea, the size of the Atma, the soul. So next to the soul, according to our teachings from Bhagavad Gita, is another soul. And that's called a super soul. Why not? We get away with saying Superman, that we got a super soul. And how is that soul super? Well, it's not so much about size. It's got a little bit more to do with the level of advancement, you know? That, say like for instance, the super soul is able to perceive everything that we all feel. I only know my own pains and pleasures, and nobody else can really understand the depth of them except for super soul. Super soul is right next door. He knows everything, pretty much. Maybe you have a neighbor that's kind of nosy, and they have the binoculars out, or they're drawing the curtains open. What's going on now? And so they have an idea what's going on, an idea. Super soul is great because the perception is of an incredible magnitude. And the thing is that some of the things that the super soul does is, you know the verse, Nityo Nityanam, Chitanas Chitananam, Eko Bahanam Yo Vidadhati Kaman. If we analyze that verse a little bit, there's the singular Nitya, eternal being, and then there's the plural eternal beings, which is all of us. The singular one is God. He's eternal, and he's one, without a second, you could say. And in this case, the role of the singular living entity that's eternal is to provide for the other living entities, to fulfill their desires. Kaman. Kama means when you have desires. And when you express those desires, that singular will provide for the needs of all of the living entities. And we have diverse desires, isn't it? We all have different interests, You might like broccoli, I don't like broccoli or whatever. We have different tastes. We have different objectives, I want to be an engineer and I want to be a good one. I want to be a lawyer and I want to be a good one. I just want to be a house husband or housewife and I want to be a good one. Everyone's got different desires. I want to be a big soccer player. Nitai, are you there? Yeah, I want to be a soccer player and I'll be a damn good one. So in this way we have desires. So it's up to the super soul to provide the needs or that fulfill those desires. That's one thing. The Bhagavad Gita also helps us to understand that the Paramatma does these things, provides, but also is very aloof and plays a neutral role. Just imagine, many people in the human form of life, we take wrong turns. We do the wrong thing. Our desires are oftentimes very skewed and jaded, if you understand what I'm saying. We don't always want what's good for us.
In progress.
Oh, thank you very much. And when there is a need for, when you got some time off, when people have some time off, what do devotees do? We chant, we dance, we have prasadam together, maybe we'll go to some, Algonquin Park and have a weekend together or something like that. And that's it, When it comes to because I was just at a resort where there's Canadians and there was, Russians and some Germans and everybody from different parts of the world, they're having some free time, and because all the booze is free, they just take advantage of that, But for us, that's not even an option. We know how to drink and drink well, and we don't have to get spoiled, right? Thanks to Srila Prabhupada, he showed us how to party and have a good time together without spoiling ourselves. So when the super soul sees what we are wanting, what are our desires and wants, it's a very, let's say, thankless task. I have to satisfy the needs of these souls who want to do things that are harmful, and I have to provide. It's like we've all studied a little bit the character of Lord Shiva, and he's known as Bhutanath. That's one of his names. That means he's the Lord of the ghosts. So ghosts have certain ulterior motives, and they have all kinds of agenda, and Shiva has the responsibility to satisfy their needs. It's kind of a thankless task, but he doesn't complain about, do I have to? It's just his job, That's how he's oriented to be. Super soul has these wonderful things. Another thing, characteristic of the super soul, is watching. It's simply watching, keeping an eye on us, And this is where it was so nice to talk to that yoga student there in Havana. And it's a little bit like, most of the Cubans, they have a little bit of a Catholic background or some Christian background. They understand the guardian angel, like whether it's Gabriel or, I don't know the names of some of the angels, but Michael is the other one, yeah. But the one who watches over, I remember when I was a kid, a lot of our friends, they had Christopher on the dashboard, a little statue of Christopher on the dashboard of their car. And that little statue was he was like a saint that was meant to protect people. Because when you're on the road, you're very vulnerable. You can be prone to be an incident, a statistic. So Christopher was there. And a lot of people like to have that, or to know that there is someone there to be a savior, a protector. One of our favorite protectors in the movement in Krishna consciousness is Lord Narasimhadev, right? When Prabhupada came to Toronto in 1970, 6, he was going over the series from chapter or canto 7 on Prahlad Maharaj and Narisingha and Hiranyakashipu, that triangle. A super duper demon, a very favorite avatar, Narasimhadev, and an innocent little saintly boy by the name of Prahlad. So Prabhupada was giving us those lessons back in 1976. And now it's important to have a protector in your life, if not one, but many. And so this is in one way what Super Soul does, keeps an eye out for us. And, we should be perceptive as devotees and understand that Super Soul is working on us. And if you make an effort to control your mind, your senses, and your bad habits, then Krishna says in the Gita, chapter 4, the Super Soul is reached. You start to feel and understand how he works. Like one devotee was with Prabhupada, and he was saying that when there's a breeze coming, is that Krishna's breath? Is that Krishna breathing? When the wind comes at me in my face, is that Krishna breathing? And Prabhupada said, yes, that is Krishna consciousness. To see Krishna in everything. That's the thing. And we just have to keep in mind that, we are a little part of Krishna, a little spark. And one time Prabhupada was walking with a devotee, and he put his tongue to this wrist here, and he went like this. He licked it. And especially if you've been walking, you might get a little salt on there. This is me. I'm just a little bit of salt, but I'm not the ocean, So we are a little, like the example is often given, a little drop of water in the ocean is not the ocean, but we have the same qualities. But because we are limited and God Krishna's unlimited, therefore we have flaws. Therefore we make mistakes. Can God make mistakes? Can Super Soul make mistakes? Not really. No. Even if, from our point of view, it seems like he's making a mistake. Like there are some talks where, lectures that Prabhupada it's been recorded, and he would quote, this happened not very often, he'd quote a verse from the Bhagavad Gita, but it was the wrong verse. It was the wrong verse. So does that mean that he makes mistakes? Well, maybe it's a spiritual flaw or mistake, but it's nothing to do with, nothing like making a major turn and doing something very obviously wrong. Krishna cannot make any fault. He's not subjected to karma, whereas we are all the time. In fact, most people are not just subjected to karma, but also a car. We are very submissive to our cars. And what happens is that when you stay at a resort in Cuba, and if you want to go somewhere else, you rent a taxi. So we got Raphael. Raphael was his name. He was a taxi cab driver. And he had a 52 model Chevrolet. And that was the year I was born. And I thought, I want to take a picture of me with it. Well, it never happened. But my God, he keeps it in mint condition, And it was a Chevrolet, but it had a Toyota engine. So that's quite common in Cuba, like a Russian engine motor with an American body. And when they built cars in the old days, they were made solid, not like the joke today, plastic, and it can crack upon you like that. And the days when they actually had bumpers, like real bumpers. Here is like if you bump someone, it'll just get crushed to pieces. So anyways, Raphael was the driver and the owner of the car. He knows he's not the car, but he's in the car. He's the knower of the field of the car with 4 wheels. And then there was another passenger there, his girlfriend, who was in the front, right in front of me. And of course they liked each other very much. And that's okay, no problem for a Swami like me. And she was also an observer of the field, of the car. So I would just like to get back to the point where Western philosophy teaches God is outside. Now, how does that differ from us? We say God is on the inside, as Paramatma. You know? And that was very comforting for her to know that God is so near. And according to the Upanishads, here's one that will flip your mind. God is near, and yet God is far. God moves fast, but God has no legs. God sees, like, great distances, but has no eyes. Those are the kind of mystical statements that come out of the Upanishads, which is some of the earlier scriptures, really. Before Leelas came out, those were some of the things that Brahmins would really mill over, those kind of statements, which does get you thinking, isn't it? It really does. Yeah, so in terms of the way we live now, everyone has to earn a living. And that we do out of a sense of duty. It's not by choice. But if we had choice, I think, what do you think would happen if we were given all this free time? What kind of people would we be? Okay, let me ask another question. What if the planet had only men? What do you think they would turn into? What do you think if there's only women on this planet? What do you think they would be like? Something interesting, right? So, if given the choice, free time versus doing something, a lot of people would try to end up doing something that would be in the realm of tamagun. Let's be lazy, from here on until we die. Maybe there will be little spurts of rajagun here and some passion, but let's just take it easy. And you have unlimited liquor, you have unlimited Kool-Aid or whatever is the alternative, Gatorade. What would we be? So by some blessing, we're forced to kind of work. And not everybody likes work. How many people like their work? How many? You like your work? Okay, that's great. All right, super. Wonderful. About 50%, I would say. That's good. So those who like their work, most likely, like the interactiveness of being with other people, or they like your product, I've been working, my boss is happy, so I'm happy. All those kind of dynamics happen, right? And in Krishna consciousness, we know that even if you have to work all the time, because in the back of your mind, you know that I'm doing this for Krishna. Yes, I'm doing it for my family and my upkeep, but I'm also doing it for Krishna. Then it doesn't become so hard to take. There's not such a big burden anymore. So that is what's called in the Gita Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga, there's 2 chapters dedicated to it. Chapter 3 and chapter 5. And you line them up together. Wow, there's so many similarities there, right? And, if you work hard, but Krishna's on your mind, there is no real separation. And again, I'm just referring to more the Eastern mindset. Well, I'm doing God's work by serving his family. It's not my family. It's his family. At some point, I'm going to kiss goodbye my family members, unfortunately. But maybe just before I leave, I exit from this world, I'll get some very pronounced realization that nothing is mine. And so one of the nicest verses from the Bhagavad Gita, I like to pull out the great ones, the peace formula. Bhoktaram yagyat tapasam sarvalokam eshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam kyatvam shantim richati. The key word there is shanti. That's peace. Everybody wants peace of mind. And that comes about by, let's say, assimilating 3 things. Number 1, Bhoktaram yagyat tapasam. That means that God's the enjoyer. When he enjoys, we should be enjoying. After all, we're part and parcel. We're the apple on the apple tree. When the apple tree is nourished with water at the roots, then the apple is happy. If the tree doesn't get any water, and you just take a pitcher, pour water on the apple, it's just not going to do the job. It's just not going to work. So, Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. Sarva, everybody knows what that means, right? Sarva, all, the entirety of it. Sarva Loka, places. Maheshwaram. Maheshwaram is a name for Shiva. It's also a name for Krishna in this case. Means he's the controller, Ishvara, Maheshwara, the great controller of what? The Loka, Sarva Loka. Everything, all the real estate is Krishna's. And then, so if you can assimilate that, all the property is God's. Maybe we won't get so greedy. And property prices won't go so high. But I think it's greed behind all that nonsense, isn't it really? We constantly hear about, like Nitai's generation, that, he'll never be able to own a house. Doesn't matter how hard he tried, unless if he's super slick and a good cheater. Just because prices are so high. And that comes from the psychology that I own. I don't own anything. I don't own anything. Even your lovely t-shirt there, Leo, it's not yours. Okay. Then Suridam Sarvabhutanam. This brings us back full circle to the point of the super soul. Suridam Sarvabhutanam. So Krishna is the friend of all living beings. He's in the heart as a friend. You have to keep that in mind. Paramatma is there as a friend. He's your buddy, watching over you, waiting patiently, providing, and he has to be aloof at the same time. Show no feelings, no emotions. I just have to do my job. Yeah, so just knowing the Super Soul is with us through our daily activities, through our work, through our play, through everything we do, when we shower, when we eat, when we go to the bathroom, even there. Prabhupada makes the point that the Super Soul is so kind to us that he's like when a man walks his dog, the dog stops to do his thing, and he does that out of love. So the Super Soul comes to be with us when we do our excretions, and he does that out of love for us. He comes, God, Krishna, when we go to the toilet, God's with us at the toilet. You should realize that. And when I go to airports, which I do quite a bit, and if I have to go just to urinate or something, I have to go into the stall, and I have my beads with me, And you know how we treat our beads very sacredly, But I have no choice. I can't give it to a security guard. Would you hold on to my beads while I go for a pee? You have to go in there. The beads have to go in there with you, and the beads are as good as God. Tulsi has to go with you. So just see how kind God is as a Super Soul coming to accompany us during all the things that take place, through all the seasons. Krishna is a very seasoned person because he goes through all the seasons. Right now we're in the winter season. He has to go through Christmas, which to some people is a very dreaded time, right? It's just not a happy time for a lot of people. It's supposed to be a family time, but a lot of people don't have family. So then what do you have? It's a sad time for a lot of people. And so where's the friendship? One thing I notice about Cuba, people, they're a very loving kind of people. They're very sweet, and they go to each other. They haven't seen each other for a week or so, or even a day, and they kiss each other on the side. This is the men and the women. And they do that, and they do that just because they like each other, basically. That's what keeps them together, despite the challenges of the country. One day I was walking, had my beads that I had since the time of Prabhupada, my japa beads. And there was a young fellow who came up. It was near the university in Havana. And he came up, and I thought he was going to do one of those Spanish greetings. And actually, he was just he saw my bead bag, and he thought it was a money bag. And then he didn't actually go to the side here, and he realized it was around my neck, but he did yank it. He pulled it off and took off, with my beads from Prabhupada. Rascal. So I had to learn to be aloof myself, to get a little touch of what it means to be a transcendentalist. Okay, so what can you do, you know? We had our posse out there. We sent all our men out there. Look for my bead bag, because once he finds there's no money in there, he'll just throw it in a bush. So look at all the bushes, you know, like the 3 blocks radius of where it happened. And then I went to the devotees, you know, I said, okay, we can't find it. Should we go to the police? You know, I said, don't even try. They're not going to help you. Yeah. So anyways, my point is about Paramatma. The super soul is there for us. And we just have to open up our heart, and you can understand his presence, you know, by your submission, by your openness. And the more we close the doors, and we're living more and more in a society culture that denies the existence of Krishna, then we'll be in a tough spot. It's better to be very faithful to the Lord. So, as in the tradition, I think it's a good idea just to at least look at Bhagavad Gita. And I'll just choose one, okay? This is from Karma Yoga, chapter 5. Tad buddhiyas, tad atmanas, tan nishtas, tad parayana, gajantya ampunar avriting, jnana nirduta kalmasa. When one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge, and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. So liberation will come to us. We just kind of open up our minds and our hearts and act in a way that's very clean. I know that. I think most of us are like this. After a shower, don't you feel good? Mm-hmm. So isn't it one of the highlights of the day? And if you take 2 showers, that's even better. And 3 is even better. Devotees are known to take lots of showers. In Halifax, when the boys got an apartment above a Greek restaurant, there was, I think it was only supposed to be 2 or 3, but we had 5. And when the owners looked at the water bills, you know, because devotees take showers a lot, they thought, oh, I don't think we can keep these guys anymore. Yeah, so we feel best when we're clean, isn't it? And what precedes the feeling of purification is sometimes we feel guilty because we've done something wrong, and that's okay. If there's no guilt for wrongdoings, then you're just your heart is steel framed. Those are the phrases used in the Bhagavatam. Hearts that are steel framed. So we just want to soften up. That's all. I like avocados. If I go to the grocery store and you look at it, looks good, but you have to kind of like just put a little pressure on. And if it's hard, no. Okay. But you might take that, purchase it, and put it somewhere on the counter. Let it sit in a bowl for 2-3 days, it'll be all right. But we want to soften up so that we can be better prepared for what's called, in this case, liberation, freedom from the cycle of birth and death, right? So how many people like cycles? Do you like bicycles, tricycles? I started with a tricycle, that's right. Now we have what do you call a car? What kind of cycle is that? I know they call it horsepower.
Quadricycle?
Quadricycle, okay. You know, and yeah, circles are good. They're important for us. We're going through this every year. I like seasons. I like seasonal changes. I don't know about you, Bruce. Some people don't like the cold. When they say I'm from Canada, oh, it's cold. And if they're from the top, it's, oh, you're from there, that's hot. I just have to bat against them, you know. It's too hot, you can't, at least when it's cold, your brain is functioning, you know. When it's too hot, you want to melt into the ground. So if somebody takes pot shots at Canada, I just want to let you know. Or even Russia, you know. Said, well, you know, you're living in a place where it's hot. Like, isn't that the idea of hell? Depiction of hell where there's lots of fire? You know? So I think the seasons are very good for us. The diversity is great. One place that I do visit is Hawaii, and it's supposed to be up to the same all year round. And to me, it's kind of bland, really. You know, it's December. I want to see snow. I went to Miami once, near Christmas time, and I saw someone had one of those plastic snowmen on their green lawn, and I said, "It doesn't work. It's out of place." So the seasons are good, and they help you develop thick skin. That's the point. So I think we can just be content that Krishna's always with you, and even if we're engaged in, hard labor, because I'm doing it for my family and me, and I'm doing it for Krishna, there's no difference, then it's all right. Krishna's telling Arjuna, you have to fight. I know it's very uncomfortable for you, because you're fighting against family members, but please try to understand you're doing it for me. There shouldn't be any separation. Like, what are the things that separate? Oil and water, they separate. I used to milk a cow, and when the bucket was filled, all the heavy stuff, like the watery stuff, was at the bottom, but the cream was on the top. It was a clear separation, And if you're going to take some of it, you'll skim off the cream, the top part. And so here we don't have to separate. We don't have to divorce. We have to just kind of hold it all together. Keep it all together. Krishna's with you. He's with you at your work. And he's also watching you as Paramatma. And so with that in mind, knowing that you've got a guardian angel there should be no problem whatsoever. You'll become an optimist. My dad was a factory worker. I didn't come from a Brahmin family. Some people are very proud. Like we went to a program yesterday. Oh, we're Brahmins. The couple were saying, we're Brahmins. And, okay. That's nice. What I want to say, what Brahminical things are you doing? So my dad was not a Brahmin, but he was a factory worker. But he believed in God. It was very big thing. When he was working on the assembly line 8 hours a day, it actually meant, I'm doing this as a sacrifice. That was his mindset. Now, the only area where he complained was about everyone else complaining. Everyone complaining about their job and using foul language. And he just kind of stay aloof from that. We never heard foul language from him, except for a few Dutch words here. Anyways, let us show our next generation that life is not so bad because I have Krishna with me. Most people, everyone has a mother and a father, but we have a mother and a father, and we have Krishna, we have Guru. So that we have 2 items that a lot of people don't have, right? So that means we're rich. A rich person is somebody who not known by how many items he owns, but known by what depth is there in his life. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Does anybody have any questions? I hope we stuck a little bit to the topic that we were asked to speak on. Yes, anything at all that might?
You were at Cuba, and what kind of people are there? So are they religious? You mentioned that yoga studios, but generally people believe in God, or?
Well, in almost any brand of communism that I know, the authorities want to marginalize religious things. There are some beautiful churches and cathedrals there, left from the time before the revolution. And so they are attended by people. I'd asked some devotees, are people religious? Do they go to church on Sunday and all that? And they said, not too much, just a very small portion.
Catholic, most of them probably.
Catholic, and also I got to understand quite a few Protestant denominations are there as well. Yeah. And there's also a big following of Santerias. They do some voodoo.
Voodoo?
Yeah.
It's not religion.
Yeah, well,
voodoo is not religion.
Well, Hare Krishna, they think it is.
They believe too.
In fact, I don't know if did you ever get to know Carlos?
Oh, yeah.
Remember Carlos, like from way back? Well, Carlos changed his gender, and he's from South America, and he did it through the Santeria project, you know? And he made a movie of it. He called it The Voodoo Woman, and of course it did really well. And he goes through the whole procedure of what it meant to go through these changes and the religious ritualistic procedures that happen, yeah. So sometimes the Santerias come and approach me, said, why don't you come to our program? I said, I'm quite happy with what I have. Thank you so much. Yeah. There's some singing and dancing and all that. So now with Carlos, he's not Carlos anymore, he's Carolina. And it took years for me to accept it. I had a hard time with it. And even though the gender change was there, he's still got his square shoulders and an Adam's apple. So he could never get rid of his sort of masculine traits, all 100%. Yes. But the Cuban people are very spiritually inclined. I think they really take to Krishna consciousness well. And they have respect, you know. I'm walking in the streets and they just say, oh, here's a priest, you know. And everywhere I go, they just kind of look a little second time. And, you know, I don't notice it, but other devotees, Maharaj, you know, people are looking at you. Yeah, I kind of get that usually. But they do it with some oomph. Sometimes it's like a slight nod like this. So I think that's a good sign. You know? Even in our Caucasian community in Canada, it's the same thing. Like if you carry yourself all right, they'll say, oh, here's a monk, here's a Buddhist monk. You know, they have respect. And if I did some martial arts moves, they respect me even more. Yeah. But you have to carry yourself well, you know. You have to dress nice, you have to just look clean. And I think that says a lot, you know, for people, you know. And if you're looking good, like one thing I really appreciate your community, the ladies look like ladies, the guys look like guys, and you're all very clean and respectable looking, you know. And I think Prabhupada would be proud. Even guys who have beards and everything. Prabhupada was not a beard lover, but the way some people keep it so nice and neatly done, as in we have some examples here, you know, and it looks nice, it looks beautiful, you know. I mean, Arjuna, he wasn't exactly like a shaman-headed guy, you know. Yeah, so it's good. I mean, a lot of your preaching, a lot of your trying to send the message out there is done automatically through you expressing yourself externally. You know, how you dress and how you look and how you carry yourself. People will look at that and it will register. Oh, those are Russians. Oh, those are Jewish Russians. Or those are, or Ukraine, whatever it is, Ukrainian. And they're Krishna. They must be Hindus or something. Part Hindu, part Jew. You know, Hindu. Actually, I have a godbrother. He called himself Mr. Hindu, and he is a journalist. His name is Barry Brown, but he was actually coming from a Russian-Israeli sort of background. And he was born in Canada, and we used to do Sankirtan together. That was hard to hear when he passed away. He was quite a humorist. He was a joker.
All of it?
Yeah, he was a little bit lost. So you've been around. You know people. Any other questions or thoughts that you may have?
Is there ISKCON community at Cuba, or there are no Krishna consciousness people there?
There are conscious people there in the different towns. Like we go to Santa Clara, which is a very radical, liberal kind of town. Havana is the major place with most of the people, so naturally you'll have Matanzas, another Rodas, Cienfuegos. There are devotees sprinkled here and there. So now when we go, we'll meet you in Havana, come on over, even though it's hard for them. You have to pay a lot of money just to go to the city in a taxi or a crappy old bus. And But just to let you know, it happened after I came back, 2 days after I came back from Cuba. So the news got out there. We now have a house with 8 rooms, for like it's a mansion, and it's being, prepped up and being made nice, renovated. And so, like, if you ever go to Cuba, now we've got a place for you. But they have to go through so much red tape, jumping over so many hoops to get anything done. It's very frustrating for people. And that's why the incredible exodus, going out of the country. People have had enough. Yes.
How long have you been going to Cuba? What was it you first went?
Well, I'd have to, maybe around 2008 or something, or 10, somewhere in there. I didn't keep track.
So that long ago, I'm wondering if you could give some advice. I mean, you would never think Krishna consciousness in Cuba. It's something you wouldn't associate. So the fact that you've been going for so long. Do you have any advice for us when we're going into places, whether it's a country or maybe some environment with family, where we might be nervous about how do we represent Krishna consciousness, or how will people respond to us? And for some people, it could be just being amongst maybe some extended family or some work thing, or maybe you are traveling or you're out trying to do some outreach. So I'm just curious if you could share some insight how you dealt with that. Maybe you didn't have nerves, but how you felt going to Cuba for the first time.
Yes.
And presenting Krishna consciousness in such a unique environment.
Well, I always went as I am, dressed in dhoti, kurta, and so on. And it used to be that when I'd stand in line, and before I went to the security, someone would come to me specifically, beeline their way right towards me and say, "So how are you?" And almost apologetically. And I'd say, I'm fine. I said, "Oh, so you're in Cuba your first time?" "No, I've been here before." "Yeah, I'm just a yoga teacher." And then there's this one fellow who then asked, "These are your followers?" That's what they get a little worried about. "Oh, these are just some of my yoga students." One thing that I found out is that yoga is a magic word, and over there. And I might have told you the story before, but it was maybe 6 years ago. I went with a book, with a box full of Bhagavatams in English for the Indian embassy, to establish something with them. And when we were at the carousel, to pick up our stuff, and one guy would take this, bring it over. So then we went to the stainless steel table. There were about 6 people there. They were curious about me and curious about, I'd already gone through one hoop. I said, "I'm a yoga teacher. I'm staying at Memories Resort." Oh, Memories Holidays. I'm a tourist, in other words. And then they asked me to put the box on the table. They didn't know a stitch of English. And I just said, "Gift, Indian embassy." And they looked at each other. And then open. They opened it up. And I was just so grateful that the 5th canto wasn't at the top, where they showed hellish planets and things like that, what happens to you. And anyways, the one gentleman, he picked up the book. He looked at the Devanagari script, couldn't understand the English. And again, like this kind of shrugging of shoulders went on. He said, "Well, these are books on Bhakti Yoga." "Yoga." "Oh, yoga! Oh, okay. Go. And then this last year, I went with Ganganath. He's a Cuban-born boy that we traveled together this year as well. And I had a suitcase full of Prabhupada's books, and he had a suitcase full of Prabhupada's books. And then we had our own luggage, right? So last year, they questioned him, because he was the one that could talk the language. It was a young woman. Said, "What are these? What are these?" "Oh, these are books on yoga." So, "Oh, we can use that in this country." And then this year when we came through, because I come through the same airport, they know me now. They know me, and I've never done any harm. And so they didn't ask us anything about anything. So I'm just saying that people are getting more relaxed. They're becoming more maybe westernized, if I could use that term. And so it's not such a big issue anymore. And I don't have much fear. You can do a kirtan in any park, but the first year I went, I was just Hare Krishna, kind of looking around, will the authorities come and get us? Because we were told about devotees who had gone there, like in the 80s. They went to downtown Havana, like where they have, the opera house and all this stuff, and they got deported, just right away, bang. We also heard about people who tried to escape on rafts and whatever, makeshift boats, and helicopters are coming shooting at them. The authorities were, they very much were resentful of anybody trying to leave without going through proper channels. But now things have become more relaxed. And one of the boys that I gave Diksha to, who's now in Miami, he told me about his experience. So they made a raft, like a square thing, and they had like a pole built in the middle, and they just carried with them practically nothing. They just had water, like water for drinking, sweet water. And then, as they went along, they saw some boats and rafts that were abandoned, ooh, it was like an ill omen, like a bad omen. And then a storm came up. And, so everyone had to hold on to the pole in the middle. The waves were coming up real high, splashing. And people screamed. These are family members. Somehow they all survived and they made it to Miami. But it was a real traumatic experience, trying to get out of there. Now it's much easier. But the government has no connection with the public, with the people. It's totally separated. In a democratic country, people, they get around, they move around, and that your president or prime minister will put on a hard hat and be there with the boys who are on the workforce, or go on the tractor, but they don't do that kind of stuff over there. They don't try to win the favor of the people. So it's unfortunate. Anyways, thank you. Anything else? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Lakshmi Maharaj. So you mentioned that we always need to think about Krishna, and I'm wondering how can I do this? And I will give you an example. So I have experience doing several things at the same time. I can sit in the car, I can drive, I can listen to radio, and I can receive instructions from my wife. And do
with taking a whole prasadam, goes on with a little reading, or just putting on a recording of Prabhupada. Any of those things, any of them, or all of them, all of the above, can help a lot, just to remind you of Krishna. And instead of putting Christopher on the dashboard, maybe you want to put Krishna up there on the dashboard. So something like that, why not? Mm-hmm. A lot of Catholics, they put the rosary on and loop it over the rear view mirror, and just as a kind of a reminder. I think all those kind of things happen. And even Mr. Super Successful Businessman, he always has on his desk the picture of his family, right? And I remember walking across Canada, I'd see these guys, especially in the prairies, because the traffic is a little bit less, but they're in their big trucks, and you see one of those, like big dolls, or like a dinosaur doll or something, because that's coming from their kid, right? So I remember my kid, through that fluffy, squeezy little doll, whatever, like a teddy bear kind of. And all those little things that you do help to remind you. So optically, smelling, incense, all the things that made Ambarish a liberated person. It was like, whether it was incense or tulsi within reach. And of course, going to the temple is one thing, and seeing the deities in the morning before you go, that vision should be there. Hearing on your way to work, chanting, whatever. All those things, the 9 processes should be, we should plug into them as best we can. And you start with hearing and chanting, and at the end you end up with what is surrender. I get it now. And you employ all those little, let's say, gestures, and it goes a long way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Start off on the right note. You know, if you're leading a kirtan or something, you're playing harmonium and the note is wrong, and then everyone else is thrown off. But if you start on the right note, and then you can really carry everybody with you. We have members of the Bhakti Academy. Some of them are a little tone deaf, and sometimes it sounds, oh my God, I just rather hear some coyotes. I really. and it's, some of them don't know it, that they are tone deaf. You have to tell them, and you also have to remind them, by the way, can just tone it down a little bit, like the volume a little bit, so not to disturb others. Oh yeah. But they kind of forget that they think they're just with everybody else on top. So let's just get in tune with Krishna, and by that morning thing, and then what helps the morning assists in the morning is the evening. What do you do in the evening? Again, employ yourself in Krishna conscious activities. Prabhupada came to brainwash us, for sure. He came to set us straight that Krishna is the main object of attention. And he's given us all the tools, everything. Nothing is amiss. What really helps, of course, is to be in touch with devotees. It really is. Sometimes I have to do a lot of emails and phone calls. And for me, I just need a break. Even though it's with devotees, but it's kind of like business stuff. Said, I just have to go for a walk. As long as you can have a little break in your day. And I would go for those recess moments also. What they call coffee break, you call it the Krishna break. Yeah. Just pull the beads out. One thing that I also find helps out a little bit, it's just a practical thing that has been helpful for me, is that if you feel sort of the toxic elements coming at you, and just take a little walk away from people. If there's too many people in your domain, then get away from them for a bit and look in the sky. Look at the blue sky, and just spend a minute at that. And I find it really helps. What does the sky mean? Well, how would you interpret the sky? It's big, it's unending, it's Krishna. It is blue, Krishna's blue. You can take those kind of interpretations and see it like that. Now how to balance the day.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else? Yes.
No. Well, thank you very much, Guru Maharaj. Sometimes when we do something right or something wrong, we have this feeling in ourselves, right? Which I believe called conscience. Is a conscience a voice of Paramatma, or is there any connection between?
When you say concise, what do you mean?
Conscience. Maybe. Conscience.
When you're conscientious or conscious, I don't think there's much difference.
No, conscience.
Conscientious, very sensitive about everything. Well, when you're sensitive, it just means that you are acting very much in sattva gun, a lot of goodness. It's one of the highest of the three energies. And it means you're becoming softened. People we were talking about the steel-framed heart, you get hard-hearted when you're not sensitive about everything that's around you. That's what a lot of the naturalists or the green people are trying to tell us. Be careful with this earth, and go for a forest bath. What I mean by forest bath?
Yeah.
Cleanse yourself, walk through the trees, and you come back feeling so much better. So much better. So your question lies in if you're feeling either good or bad, is that being conscious?
And the question is there any connection with Paramatma here?
Oh, Paramama. Well, I would say you would be able to appreciate his presence when you control your senses. Going back to the reference of the Bhagavad Gita, just if you're really good with your habits, then you are automatically going to feel the presence of Super Soul. It's going to be, let's say he's getting closer to you, for sure. Because you're stepping outside of the mundane world by making the effort to go closer to Krishna. And the feelings of good and bad, being sensitive about those things, it's just being thoughtful. I think that when we talk about sattva gun, what it means to be thoughtful. That every thought is important to you. And that you kind of like process everything before you say or do something. So I don't know if that answers the question. But you know what it's like when you're young and you're a young whippersnapper. You're just all over the place. And did you notice that rose bush? So what rose? Rose bush? Roses what? Where? It's because you're so occupied in yourself. But when you get older, you get all sensitive about the smells, about the sights, isn't it? When you get more mature, you start to notice things more, like almost like when you were a baby and just getting out of crawling and you're starting to, oh, wow, what is this? Everything is like being in Wonderland, So I think, the aging process, going through middle age and all that it doesn't have to be a crisis. It's only a crisis if you let it be.